No! Drink the bleach!
Hey everyone, welcome to Reading Backwards, the manga reading vlog that's permanently stuck in the past. My name's Tim, and this is the first episode of something that I'm kind of generically referring to as the Bleach Project, where I'm going to attempt to read all of Bleach by Tite Kubo and review every single chapter. This is a series that I really enjoyed back in high school, but I have not read it since, and I never finished it either, mainly because there's a lot of it. It was a very long-running series. It started in 2001, and it didn't end until 2012, I believe. So there's over a decade's worth of manga in this one series. But I'm going to try to finish it, and I'm going to try to make a video for every single chapter that I read. Now, some of you who may be more familiar with the series are probably thinking to yourselves, that means he'll be doing 600 plus videos on this one series. And yeah, you're right. I must be losing my mind. But honestly, these videos, and by extension this channel, is kind of an experiment on my part to see if these nostalgic stories from my childhood are still worth reading today. So if eventually I do have enough of Bleach and I decide I'm not having fun anymore, I will set it aside and try again with another series. But for now, I'm really excited. So let's stop beating around the bush and get into Chapter 1 of Volume 1, Death and Strawberry. Now, I've read this first chapter of Bleach multiple times, and I've seen the anime episode that adapts this chapter multiple times as well. And even many, many years after the fact, I still think this holds up as a really solid first chapter. I think it does a really good job of introducing us to our main character, as well as giving us several recurring elements of Tite Kubo's writing style, as well as a very clear understanding of the basic kind of bare bones of the lore that everything else in this series is built upon. And when we start off, we're introduced to our main character, Ichigo Kurosaki, a 15-year-old high school student from Japan. Now, I've heard that a lot of people don't like Ichigo as a character. They say that he's kind of boring, he doesn't have that much of a personality, that he's a purely reactionary character. I've always kind of liked him. I've always appreciated him as a protagonist, mainly because, opposed to the protagonists from some of the other really popular Shonen Jump titles that were running around the same time, Ichigo kind of stands out as an anomaly. Unlike Luffy from One Piece or Naruto from Naruto, Ichigo is just a normal guy. He has this sort of Stan Lee Marvel Comics-esque origin story, kind of like Spider-Man. There's actually a lot of similarities between those two characters. He starts off as just this ordinary teenager, and then he has these supernatural responsibilities thrust upon him, and he now has to juggle all the supernatural shenanigans with his mundane everyday life, friends, family, school, that kind of thing. It's a very simple way of creating drama for your series, but it's very effective, and I really, really like it. But like I said, he starts off pretty normal. He's just a normal 15-year-old high school kid in Japan. He does have orange hair, which is kind of odd for a Japanese kid, so everyone calls him Strawberry because he has strawberry blonde hair. But aside from that, he's pretty normal. Except for one other thing. He can see ghosts. And in that, we are introduced to the first real supernatural elements in this series. Ichigo, and by extension, his two younger sisters, can see ghosts. Now, he believes that this is because his family runs a clinic. His father's a doctor. He runs an emergency clinic out of their home. And because of this, Ichigo believes that since it is his family's business to take care of the living, they literally keep the living from the brink of death, that he and his sisters have some kind of connection to the afterlife, and that's why they can see ghosts. That's actually not the reason at all, but they will reveal that in time, but we'll get to it. We're not quite there yet. In fact, we're nowhere even near there yet. We are then introduced to Ichigo's family. Like I said, he has two younger sisters, a single father. His mother passed away when Ichigo was very young. In fact, if I remember correctly, he's the only kid from the family who has, like, distinct, definable memories of his own mother. It's very sad. His mother also passed away due to very violent, very mysterious circumstances. But once again, I'm getting ahead of myself. That is a topic for another video. For now, we're introduced to another element of Tite Kubo's writing, the kind of wacky screwball humor that he often interjects into the series in the form of Ichigo's father, who is kind of an eccentric character. He has this one character quirk that becomes a kind of running gag throughout the series, where for some reason, whenever Ichigo comes home from school or wakes up in the morning or just enters a room that his father happens to be in, his father will just assault him, just punch him or kick him or tackle him, just attack him out of nowhere. And it's not even in like an abusive way. It's just like he really wants to wrestle his son and bond through physical torment, essentially. So he means well. It's how he shows affection to his kid, but he's a little too aggressive. And it becomes this running gag where they're always getting into these ridiculous, cartoony, over-the-top grappling matches. And Ichigo's constantly berating him, telling him, "What's wrong with you? You beat your son up on a daily basis." And his father just kind of brushes it off like, it builds character. Don't be like that. But in any case, Ichigo comes home late from school one evening. His father gets angry at him for being late, and so he starts wrestling him like he does. Ichigo's having none of it. He pushes his father away, walks up to his room to be alone for a while. And while he's in his room, he witnesses this mysterious young woman in a black kimono just appear in his bedroom. She just blips into existence in the middle of the room. And at first, Ichigo thinks that his house is being broken into. And so he starts screaming at this woman. And she seems kind of surprised that he can both see and hear her. And she eventually reveals to him that she's not a burglar. She is, in fact, a Shinigami, a death god, or as the English manga translates it, a soul reaper. It kind of harkens back to this concept in ancient Japanese mythology. I think it might be Shinto mythology, but I'm not sure about that. But in any case, the Shinigami is this kind of lesser god that collects and shepherds human souls to the afterlife after death. It's this kind of Japanese equivalent to the Western Grim Reaper in a way. And in this world, the Soul Reapers have two jobs. The first job of theirs is to exorcise the pure spirits, the ghosts, the souls that Ichigo and his sisters can see in their daily lives because of this sixth sense that they have. They perform this, the Soul Reapers perform this kind of ritual that sends these souls off to the afterlife, the Soul Society, as they call it. And their other job is to slay hollows. Hollows are these human souls that through some form or fashion have been corrupted and transformed into these vile, evil monsters who hunger for the souls of the living. And so this young woman, Rukia, this Soul Reaper, has come to this part of Ichigo's neighborhood, tracking down a hollow. She's found a hollow nearby, and she's been tracking it for a while. But she's confused that it seems like every time she gets close to this thing, its signal, she can sense its spiritual pressure, its spiritual essence. But every time she gets close to it, it feels like the signal gets jammed. It's almost like there's something muffling the energy coming off of this thing whenever she gets close. And as she's explaining this to Ichigo, they hear this loud crash downstairs. There's a blood-curdling scream. And they rush downstairs and find that Ichigo's family is in fact being attacked by this monster, this hollow. Ichigo's father is sprawled in one corner of the kitchen with his back ripped to shreds. His one sister, Karen, is lying in the hallway unconscious. And his youngest sister, Yuzu, is currently in the grip of this giant monster, about to be eaten. And so, not knowing what to do, but knowing that he has to protect his family, Ichigo picks up a baseball bat and runs after this thing, but it just brushes him aside like a fly. Luckily, Rukia is there. She draws her samurai sword, attacks this thing, and rescues Yuzu from the monster. But then the hollow just starts mopping the floor with her. And it's at this point that I, as someone who has read further into the series, and I've seen the different threats that our characters face in this series. I've seen the extent of the power and brutality of some of the villains in this series. And this really makes me question just how skilled and how proficient of a Soul Reaper Rukia is if she's just being absolutely manhandled by this jobber, this low-level hollow that we're given in the first chapter of this series. But again, I'm getting way too ahead of myself. That's another discussion for another time. At one point, the hollow lunges after Ichigo, and Rukia puts herself in between them. She stabs the thing in its face, but at the same time, it bites into her with its jaws and rips into her flesh. And she just has this horrible flesh wound. She is bleeding out. She's literally bleeding to death right there on the sidewalk outside their house. And you might be asking how a spiritual being can bleed to death. Don't worry about it. It's not important. The fact is, she is on death's door, and she knows that she can't stop this thing. And so she tells Ichigo, there is only one way we can even have a chance of defeating this thing. But it's very dangerous. In fact, it might kill you, but it's the only chance we have. Throw yourself on my sword, and you will absorb the power of the Shinigami. My dark essence, part of my energy, will flow into you, and you will temporarily become a Soul Reaper. And hopefully with that power, you can fight off this thing and protect your family. And Ichigo's mind is reeling. He has no idea what to do. Eventually he decides, fine, I'll do it. He throws himself on Rukia's sword. There's a blinding flash of light, a cloud of dust, and when that dust settles, there's Ichigo in his badass samurai Soul Reaper form with a giant freaking 6-foot-long katana like he just stepped out of a Final Fantasy game. And with this new Soul Reaper power, he makes quick work of this hollow. And Rukia, who at this point is now not dying of her flesh wounds or spirit wounds or whatever, again, don't question it. She questions what exactly has happened. It seems that all of her power, her dark essence, has now left her. Instead of absorbing a fraction of her power, Ichigo has somehow absorbed all of it. And she comes to the realization that that thing that was muffling the spiritual pressure of this hollow, the reason that she couldn't sense this thing the closer she was getting to it, was because Ichigo himself has so much spiritual power. It was blocking out the hollow's signal. Whatever Ichigo is, he might not be entirely human. And so now, after having slain this hollow, this monster that was threatening his family, we get this last panel where we're given a kind of text block, a readout of his stats, where it says, Ichigo Strawberry Kurosaki, 15 years old, hair, orange, eyes, brown, occupation, high school student / Soul Reaper. And that's how that first chapter ends. Like I said, I think it's a really solid introduction to the series. The last thing I want to say about it is that as I was reading this chapter, and like I said, I read it multiple times, and I've seen the anime episode multiple times, but I must have seen it a lot more than I remember, because as I'm flipping through these pages and looking at these panels, the music from the anime kept popping into my head. Now, for those of you who have not seen the anime, that show had a soundtrack that must have been comprised of like 7 or 8 tracks tops, because the music was constantly recycled in every single episode. The same songs were played over and over again. And one of them was Ichigo's theme song, titled Number One. And it stood out for being this track that, it was a mishmash of electric guitar riffs and solos with gospel vocals.
If you wanna see some action, gotta be the center of attraction.
And that song played almost every single time Ichigo did something even remotely cool. And so as I'm reading this chapter and I'm watching Ichigo rip this hollow to shreds with his giant sword, that song sprang unbidden into my head, and it kept playing for the rest of the night.
Now you feel like number one, standing up for everyone.
It was a very weird but very nostalgic experience. It seems like the images and music from this series was just really ingrained in my mind. But yeah, it got me excited to read the rest of the series at the very least. So that's all I have to say for Chapter 1 of Bleach. I hope you'll join me in the next video when I review Chapter 2. And remember, before you open your manga, don't read on this end. flip it around, and start reading it backwards. Take care, guys.